University and has received his MBA from Ohio University in '97. Shane and his family relocated from Ohio to the Woodlands in 2011. And there's no confusion there. The Y's, there is a familiar face there. It is TJ's husband. And everybody help me welcome Shane onto the stage.
So some of you were expecting Barry Blanton. Surprise, I'm not Barry. No, Barry, I've known Barry for about 7 years, which means that's how long my wife's worked for Barry. And that's how I got to know him over the years. He's a fantastic gentleman, gives so much to the community, and it's really a heartbreak that he's not here. He really loves this event. And it's just an honor that he called me Wednesday, and he said, I'm not gonna be there. So I talked to him over the years about, maybe one time I could speak at Live2Lead, thinking I'd have months to prepare. So, it wasn't the case, and that's all right. And so we'll jump in and get started. So this is my fourth Live2Lead, and by far I will say this has been probably one of the most energized one that I've been at. Very interactive, very engaging. It's great to see. And, when I get to this part of the day, being my fourth time here, and this time I'm even more than I usually am, but in the other three, I was really excited to get to this part of the day because my mind would start to wander a little bit, even though it says that that's something I don't like to do is wander in my working genius. I just got the results, by the way, guys. So anyway, but I get kind of motivated and kind of excited about what's next. I'm going to take what I learned here today and bring it back home. And how am I going to take that towards my craft? And I've got the guidebooks. They still sit on my desk every single day, and they're there as a reminder, as a reference point, and as a reminder. You've got to take what you get from here and do the work, and that's the commitment to the craft. So why do I tell you this? And I don't know exactly what button to push here. I think it's the big green one at the top. Perfect. So why do I tell you all this? Because I want you to meet somebody. Now, earlier today with Eric Thomas and the presidential historian lady, they talked about presidents and Frederick Douglass and Martin Luther King. But I want you to meet Jimmy Johnson. Now, this isn't the football Jimmy Johnson. This is the Jimmy Johnson that taught me about your commitment to your craft. So when I was a young kid, about 18, from the time I was 18 till I graduated college, I was a meat cutter for Kroger to get through college. And I started out at the Mansfield, Ohio store, that's where I'm from, and I cut meat alongside with Jimmy. Jimmy's just the type of guy, you come in every morning, he's just happy to be there. I'm rolling in at 18, 6 o'clock in the morning, bloodshot eyes, and he's always asking, how you doing, Shane? How you doing? I'm fine, Jimmy. And this is, my team knows where I picked this up from. I'm doing fine, thanks for asking, he would always say. So, I worked with Jimmy, got trained by Jimmy on how to cut meat. And the reason why am I talking about Jimmy so much? Jimmy would cut world-class showroom steaks. Beautiful. These things were always perfect when they would come off the saw. What you got to remember is when you're cutting meat, you got a big piece of meat, try and do it right, and every piece of meat that you're cutting the steaks from is always uniquely different. And Jimmy nailed it every time. Now, I did not have an appreciation for this until I left at the end of the summer, went up to Bowling Green, where I went to college, and I worked in that meat department. And that's where I've learned Jimmy is a hell of a meat cutter, and he makes showroom steaks. So anyway, why is this important? Because over the years, I worked at several different stores, and everybody knew when I would come in and cut meat with them, I wasn't going to be a meat cutter for the rest of my life. So I got the courage to ask one day Jimmy, because I didn't want it to sound off-putting. We're sitting there, and we're in the meat department, we're in the cold room, we got our blue, lab coats on, our bloody aprons. He's over there on the pork table, I'm cutting beef that day, and I worked up the courage to finally ask Jimmy, why do you, you're here, all the other meat cutters I worked with, they're down here, they're all kind of clustered in the middle. And you gotta remember something, this is a union job, which means doesn't matter if he's 10 years on the job, just like everybody else, or 15 years on the job, he's only gonna make X. He's making showroom steaks. He's blowing everybody out of the water. He's getting no bonus, no recognition, no trophy, no encouragement, nothing. And that really blew my mind. So I said, Jim, why do you do it? Without missing a beat, still jumping on his toes, cutting his meat. He just looks up and he goes, because it's my craft. Why wouldn't I? Goes right back to it. And son of a bitch, you know? Here I am, 31 years later, and I'm still blown away by Jimmy's message because it's a commitment to his craft. No other reason, no other motivation, but to just be committed to it. And why do I share that with you today? Because I'm excited to be up here because I know I'm in a room full of Jimmys. How do I know? Because the better question is, where's everybody else at? You're committed to your craft. You're committed to your craft by your very presence here. And that means I'm speaking to a room full of Jimmys. And that gets me excited. So anyway, he's still alive. He's still kicking. He's a great guy. And he still says, I'm doing fine. Thanks for asking. So anyway, so that's Jimmy. And I really wanted to talk about this because in the 31 years since I stood across from Jimmy cutting meat, a lot's happened. So I had 5 years with Kroger, and then I spent 5 years in retail management. And on that journey, when I started as a practitioner in leadership, if you will, I learned 3 truths and a side note that I want to share with you all today. Now, I'm not trying to compete with John Maxwell's 700 laws. I mean, let's be honest. I'm just a meat cutter from Mansfield, Ohio with a suit jacket on. So we'll start out small here with 3 truths and a side note. But the first one I want to talk about is there is no such thing as a permanent decision. A wise man taught me that. And I use that, and it's hard as a leader because we are always charged with and expected as a leader to bring certainty to our organizations. We're required to bring certainty to those who are in our charge. But here's the thing, the certainty is not around the decision, it's around the direction. John Maxwell says to us that the pessimist complains about the wind, the optimist knows that it'll change, and the true leader adjusts the sails. Now, what didn't change there in that quote is the destination did not change. So there's no such thing as a permanent decision. And when I finally absorbed this message for myself, boy, it unleashed, because I tell you, through my own personal experience, trying to get it right, trying to make sure it was perfect, antagonizing every decision before I would ever make it. Well, you don't take a lot of risks when you've got that mindset. You're trying so hard to be perfect because you don't want to be ridiculed. You don't want to be made fun of. But man, like John said today, get over yourself. Because when you understand that your commitment is to bring certainty around the direction, then you get out of the way and you let your team do the rest. And when you do that and they're part of the decision-making process, they're part of everything that goes into getting to the destination, they're going to show up. They're going to be committed. They're going to be engaged. And some of these things I didn't learn until later in life. But the one thing I also learned is as a leader, sometimes I'm going to make the wrong choice to get to the right place. It happens all the time. And how you course correct is a direct reflection of how your team will respond when you have to course correct. So, anyway, get over yourself, get out of the way, because there is no such thing as a permanent decision. The second truth is a lesson is repeated until it is learned. Why is this important? So let's see, I started out, I think I was 22 years old when I started out in retail management. And at Halliburton, I went through their 3 levels of business leadership development. So I got to BLD 3, I'm 48 years old. So whatever the math is on that, 26 years. 26 years until that moment, I spent all my leadership energy on trying to eradicate my weaknesses. I did the DISC, and I'd get the results. I'd look past the results. I'd go right to what I wasn't. I did the Myers-Briggs. I was an ISFTJ or whatever the hell it is. And I'm a feeler. God, I'm not a thinker, or however else it was. I was a thinker, but I wasn't a feeler. And so focused. And I do the 360-degree feedback. And you know what I do? I keep looking at what I'm not. And I spent 26 years as a leader trying to eradicate my weaknesses. And here's the damnable misery of that. My career continued to progress. And I wasn't growing. With each level of responsibility that I took on, it just became more crushing, more difficult as a leader to get through.
And then, what's this magic thing that happened at BLD3 in 2019 when I'm 48 years old? Clifton Strength Finders. I was so mad after I took that assessment. You put me through 3 levels of leadership and you didn't tell me this day one what my strengths were? And then once I found those strengths, boy, I gotta tell you, it was life-changing. And the thing is, when you buy that book, they'll give you your top 5 strengths for free, and then they try to get you to spend $40 to get the rest. I don't spend that $40. It's not because I'm a tight ass. It's just because I've met me, and I know exactly what I'll do with that $40. I'm gonna go look at what I'm not. Still to this day, at 52, haven't really learned my lesson yet, so it's still repeating in me. But what I learned on this continuous loop of always trying to focus on my weaknesses, I was afraid of being weak. And you can see there by that quote up there, focusing your strengths on your weaknesses doesn't make you less weak. It doesn't do anything. It really doesn't. True strength lives where fear cannot gain a foothold because it lives at the center of belief. And like John Maxwell said, once you find your strengths, you find your voice. So that's something that the Working Genius is doing for us today as well. It's helping you find your voice and helping you run towards that. And when I start there and I talk about running towards something, and John Maxwell brought it up in this closing session about, when you leave, you're not leaving something, you're running towards something. So I had this great 6-year run at Halliburton. I had a team of 45 across the globe. I had $1 billion checkbook. Man, I'm sitting there doing all these great deals over in Amsterdam and over in Jordan, traveling to 7 cities in China. And then my former boss calls me up one day, and he's like, "What do you think? You want to come over? You want to come over to this small place where we can't even pay the bills. We got one inventory turn, and it's a shit show." And I ran towards it. You want to know why I ran towards it? Because I had my bug-out bag full of my strengths, and I knew I could do it because I knew my strengths at that point. And I threw that all away, so to speak. And I came over to Flowtech now, and we're having a hell of a time resurrecting this company. It's a great thing. It's a great experience to rebuild my team. And as I talk about my team, I want to go back to Jimmy real quick. I asked 2 members of my team who are here today because I know the story about the rest of my team members. My 10 years in retail management, guess what kind of people I hire on my team? And it's not a condition of employment. I've just discovered it over the years. They worked in retail just like I did. And there's something about that kindred spirit of working with the public in a very difficult setting, getting physically pulled across the layaway counter on December 23rd because you lost the Christmas gifts. Oh yeah. You pick up certain life skills that can't be trained, So, but anyway. So again, the message here is, that lesson will continue it will be repeated until it is learned, and accelerate those things. You've been given 3 wonderful tools today around your working competencies, your working genius, and your working frustration, and I want to put a +2 on that. So when you go home and you stay committed to your craft and you've digested the working genius a little bit more, do me a favor, jump on YouTube, look up Marcus Buckingham, The Truth About You. It's a 20-minute video, and the reason I'm saying do that is because when I was given Clifton Strength Finders and we went through the whole debrief that day at BLD, your homework was that night to go watch that video, and I gotta tell you, it puts a cherry on top of the whole thing. It really drives the message home of what the working genius is trying to tell you. All right. What was the other one? Oh yeah, I said +2. The other one was, there it is, good Lord. Have the courage and the resolve to take action with this. Just don't watch the video and go, "Oh, that's neat." Commit to the craft. If you're here today investing 6-7 hours in it, man, take it the rest of the way for the next 364 days till you come back next year. All right, number 3. When you give yourself the gift of honesty, you give yourself permission to grow. I can't emphasize this enough. And the best way I can drive this point home is the antithesis of that. I was having a great conversation with a colleague just recently, and she said, some of the most difficult people to lead and to follow are those who are the least self-aware. And we talked about it all day long, why you have to be self-aware. And like John Maxwell says, this is about that gift of honesty. It's about authenticity. And it isn't like I can stand up here and look at you. You don't have your name tag on, so I won't pick on you, but I'll pick on Aaron, Yeah, I'm authentic because I feel authentic. It's something in the interaction. When you know you're speaking to somebody, if they're being authentic. The first condition of being authentic is this right here. You have to be honest with yourself. Because when you're leading people, they'll see right through it all. We all do. It's a sixth sense. You know when you're getting smoke blown. We all know. But, you know, when you embrace yourself as a leader, and you give yourself the gift of honesty, and you're transparent about that, and you own your weaknesses, and you're transparent about it, your team will rally. And it also creates an awareness for you to understand which people you're going to put on your team. And it's always dynamic and it's always changing. So then the side note from that, it kind of springboards off of this. And this is something, so back in, I think 2001, I spent a week at the University of Notre Dame in this thing called Executive Integral Leadership Program. Fancy title. I guess it's just a way they could charge you more. But the gentleman walked us through a fantastic exercise. And so we spent maybe 20, 25 minutes on one day really thinking about what our goals were. And you let that marinate for a few days, and then you come back, and he's like, well, I want to talk about what your values are. Then we did that. And I want to caution you here, if you take this exercise home with you, I want to give you a litmus test on a few things. How many here think that honesty is a great value? Yeah, I thought that too. So this is the litmus test. This is where the work becomes, you have to challenge that. Here's what I mean. So we're sitting there and the guy's talking and he did the same thing. How many people put honesty? Oh yeah, honesty are up front. It's a great value to have. And he goes, okay. And I'll share with you something very similar. So Memorial Hermann is what? A mile or two away from here. Transport you over there. You got a relative, significant other. They're sick. The prognosis is terminal. And you're over there, sitting by their bedside, you got their hand in your hand, you're rubbing it. Machines are beeping. And everybody knows what's going on. And you're there to sit there and spend time with that loved one in their last few awake moments and bond with them one last time. Yeah, I was talking with a doctor and he said, man, it's going to be really crappy here the next 3 or 4 days. You're going to get a lot of pain. They're going to shoot you full of morphine. You're just going to die. That's honesty. So are you going to be honest in that situation? That's what I mean by give it a litmus test. No, you value compassion more than you value honesty. And this is a type of litmus test. E.T. Eric Thomas talked about it today. He was up there talking about how I'm not sacrificing my family to sell more books. And I applaud that. But here's what I know. When you set your values down beside your goals, there's a thing that sits in the middle. It's called integrity. And integrity is that invisible force that says, I will not give up this value to get to this goal. And I mean, when you put the litmus test to it, I'm going to stand up here right now and I'm going to tell you, because John said with every step of leadership, there's sacrifice every step of the way. And I will proudly stand up here and tell you, I have sacrificed my family. You know why? Because I value being a provider a whole hell of a lot. And that's just me. I make no excuses for it. I make no apologies for it. But my kids know I love them. They absolutely know that I love them. Because it is my responsibility to be a provider, to give them the life I never had. That is my goal. And I will sacrifice the swim meet, the basketball game, whatever, to make sure they get that. And I'm not ashamed of that. You know, in today's Twitterverse and all that, you put that out there, oh, Shane doesn't like his family, you know. That's what I mean, that brutal honesty with yourself. I've done it. I have no apologies for it. My wife and I don't fight about it because she knows that's me. And that's who she married. And that's what it's about that gift of honesty that you bring to yourself. So when you sit down and you're having that discussion with yourself, will I give up this value to meet this goal? And you say yes, congratulations, you're finally being honest with yourself. And there's work to be done. If you say no, being honest with yourself, there's work to be done. This journey of leadership is nothing more than standing up out here in the world, like John Maxwell said once. You're vulnerable for everybody. You stand up here in front of everybody with all of your flaws fully on display, right next to that big bag of strengths that you're bringing to the table. Don't shy away from them. And then I think to just wrap it all up, I'm Shane Wise. It was great to be here with all you today. Go find your Jimmy Johnson, go cut some beautiful steaks, and commit to your craft. Thank you.